There we
All
go.
right. Hey, thank you, sir. All right. Hey, greetings, friends, and welcome to our webinar number two and our lead initiative. I wanted to take just a few moments, kind of orient us to where we are, what we're doing, and what we're about to be a part of here. So, first off, I want to remind everybody that this will be recorded. So, all of our conversation that we have today, including the Q&A at the end, will be recorded. It'll be uploaded and held so that those who are unable to be a part of this live can partake of this information down the road. So I just wanted to note everybody who's on the call here that this is in fact recorded. My name is Jeff Stark. I think I know most of you on this call, but just in terms of the broader conversation that we're part of, I'm helping to oversee the lead initiative through the Lilly Endowment, which has just been a real gift to us in a number of different ways here on the Indy District. It's enabled us to take a holistic approach to building leadership capacity across the district. We're doing so through a number of different initiatives, residencies, Lead Day, which is coming up on August 22nd. I hope your churches are signed up. It's going to be a spectacular day. We've got great speakers, great workshop. It's going to be all around just an exceptional day. So I hope that you're signed up for that. But then we also are providing pastoral support in terms of mental health and spiritual direction. So there's a number of different initiatives that are out there that we can be a part of through the Lilly Endowment. Part of this is this webinar series. What we wanted to do in this webinar series is to explore the 16 attributes that we've identified necessary to build leadership capacity. As a reminder, we've talked about there are four categories: leading self, leading others to lead others, and leading with a clear mission. And also, under each of those four categories, we've identified four attributes. Today's conversation is a part of the first category, which is leading self. Uh, in May, we had our first webinar series. And during that, we also dealt with leading self, where we talked about formation, holistic integration, and self differentiation, meaning how we're formed through life impacts how we live daily. Taking a broad, holistic approach to our lives and seeking flourishing in every area of our lives is necessary, and also that we would self differentiate and ensure that we don't see ourselves primarily through the lens of our calling and our roles and our functions within the church, that we first see ourselves as the beloved children of God. We'll get into that a little bit more in one of the other categories as well, but it's something that we wanted to bring to the forefront. Today's conversation is going to be about habits and discipline. Now, I want to say this on the front end of that conversation. Any possible shame that might start to creep up in this conversation, let's just toss that to the side from the get go. We can all point to seasons of our lives when we wish we had been more disciplined or we had better habits. We can all point to those moments. The key is not to simply look back and regret what we didn't do or haven't kept up doing. It's to ask the curious question, what can we learn? How can we grow so that we can implement these things more consistently in our ministries? There's one particular story that stands out for me when it comes to habits and discipline. About 10 years ago, I was sitting on a ministry credentials board, and we were interviewing a young leader who was serving as a youth pastor at a church. It was the second year that he had missed the two classes necessary to continue on in his education within our ordination process. And as we began to talk to him about this being the second year, he just kept talking about how busy he was, wasn't able to get to two classes. And as I was listening to him, something just didn't settle well for me. So I sat back and then I leaned forward and I said, "Are you a gamer?" And he turned white. And I said, "No, no, no. I mean, like, what time at night do you go to bed from gaming?" And he said, hmm, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, "What time do you get up?" He said, "About 10." I said, "So it's not that you were busy. It's just that you have poor habits that are not serving you well and a lack of discipline to, to, to work on the things that you say matter most to you." And when all of a sudden, when he came to realize that, Now he's got agency. Now we had to take we had to take action on that. But it is an invitation to agency because now you can say, okay, it's not that the world has made me too busy. It's just that I've not done the things I need to do necessary to work on the things that are most important to me. So that kind of lingers for me in this conversation, and so we'll hopefully explore similar themes in our time together. But we have a friend of mine. We go way back. Was so far back that it's evidenced in his beard and my mustache. That's how far it goes back.
Mhm.
We were at Tribeca together in a master's program way back in the day. But I've been following Tim's ministry for years, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you in a minute. But I can just say that Tim is a pastor. He is an author. He is completed his doctorate. He is now a superintendent in the Wesleyan Church. And I've followed this ministry throughout the years, and I've been impressed by his journey of continual learning, growth, and empowering others, but even the personal work that we're going to talk about in this call that he's done in his own life. He and I have another connection. He grew up in Raleigh First Church, which is now called Amplify. And so both of us will at times preach at Amplify. And so we shared some connections through the year, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. Tim, thank you so much for being here with us. Can I
Oh,
pray
yeah.
for us and then have you introduce yourself?
Sounds great.
All right, Father, thank you for our time together this evening. What a gift it is. I pray that this time that we have will be an encouragement, that we'll learn, that we'll grow, that we'll be inspired, that we'll wrestle with some things and maybe have some walkaways where we can say, I can't work on it all at once, but I can work on this one thing that is going to help me take next steps. And maybe once I've become comfortable with that one thing in those next steps, maybe then I can add something down the road. But for right now, I'm going to focus on that one thing in the next steps. So, Lord, lead us well in this conversation in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Hey, Tim, why don't you share us a little bit about your journey, your ministry, where you're at,
Yeah.
and kind of what you find yourself doing nowadays?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks. Thanks again, guys, for the opportunity to be with you guys and share a little bit. Like I said, my name is Tim. I serve as the superintendent for the South Coastal District in the Wesleyan Church as far as my primary act of calling and work in the ministry, and then do some other things I'll explain in just a minute. But I started in ministry, just celebrated last month. 25 years of vocational ministry and 20 years since my ordination. And started in the Nazarene Church, grew up in the Nazarene Church. My family had been in the Nazarene Church since before the Nazarene Church was the Nazarene Church. And then in 2012, made a switch over just as opportunities and God led into the Wesleyan Church to serve a church in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Up to that point, I had served in pretty much anything you could do in a church, and get paid it all for. I'd cleaned churches. I've been children's pastor, youth pastor, pioneered in middle school ministry when the years before that was done. That was actually what my master's thesis was on. Have been a part of church planting, led a church through a restart without outside support. So it was an internal restart, closing down and beginning again, and then have coached other churches through that process. And then in 2000, I guess 5 years ago, so 2021, shifted into the role as district superintendent in the Wesleyan Church. It was really a connection of different pieces. So um, during just before COVID hit, we published the book, Rethinking Church, Leading the Struggling Church Through Death to New Life. It just unpacks our journey of leading a church that was on the verge of death through the process of actually dying and then seeing resurrection power enacted in that church, and how others can follow the templates and the things that God blesses in those situations. Started a conference actually 3 months before called Rethink Small, where we help small churches not try to get big, but leverage their advantages and become the best church that God had put them in their community to be. Turned that virtual during COVID and finished my doctorate during COVID. And so that all kind of coalesced and started to feel like God was calling us to something different. We had already started coaching churches and working with pastors. And it felt like there was an opportunity to go to Canada and actually pastor and teach the Rethink Small stuff. And God said, redirected us to Atlanta, where we serve with South Coastal. And there kind of became a catalyst for the same kind of restart over the last 5 years that we experienced at a local level, on a district level. Became a interpreter really for 12 Stone, the largest Wesleyan church, and the other churches on our district. So I've served as a district superintendent in these contexts, from 15,000 member church to 15 member church, and love both, and love the advantages that both have and the opportunities that both have. And over the last couple of years, it's just kind of followed a path of how can I better serve pastors and churches under my care, and then how that expanded. And we've developed some different things. I'm certified as a leadership coach, do leadership coaching for organizations as well as individuals, one-on-one or group. And as a part of my own fitness journey, searched out and became a certified personal trainer. So now I work and evangelize in a gym 3 mornings a week, and where I get to train and write workouts and work with a group of people and pour into a community, my community here, and love to get to do that, do some of that online with pastors. It's kind of a different whole of the things that God has done in me to share with others. So I get to kind of play around and have a lot of freedom. Our district gives me a lot of freedom. Luckily, when I came, they pretty much said, we don't care what you start or stop. Make this the district that the best leaders in the denomination want to be a part of in 7 to 10 years, and we'll call it a win. So, and they've let me do that, and we've been able to see some really cool things happen in that time. So, yeah, that's a little bit. I'm married. We've been married for 22 years, Anita, and I have a 19-year-old son who is beginning his second year at Georgia Tech, psych major. My daughter is starting her senior year in high school. So we're partially empty nest, headed toward that real soon.
It's a great life. I'm just going to tell you. You always miss them, but boy, empty nesting is great life.
Yeah, there's some bittersweet, but lots of sweet for sure.
That's right. That's right. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you a little bit here. The work that you did as someone who revitalized the church, who watched it die and had to see it come back to new life, that's no small endeavor. It does a lot to you. It requires a lot from you. You give a lot to it. And I just wonder, as you think back upon your journey of leading that church and then even emerging from their church, were there moments throughout when you realized that the work of ministry was threatening personal discipline, personal habits? Were there areas of your life where you began to realize, like, some things are out of balance? I need to explore these things and work on them, because ministry can become all consuming. And when it does, it can throw off the balances of our discipline and habits. Did you experience any of that?
Oh, no, never. Things were perfect for me. No, I think ministry threatens every bit of your health, your sanity, your mental health, your emotional health, as you carry the burdens for your own family and yourself and so many others. It threatens your physical health. It has a way of, the stress has a massive impact on our physical health. The body carries that, and it keeps the score, so to speak. And then our habits, right? When we're on call on demand so much, it's really difficult to feel like we can choose to allot time for our own growth, personal, spiritual, physical, emotional. And so there were constant resets along the way, moments. A critical moment for me was in 2019. So we were in an Air Force town in Goldsboro, North Carolina. The town turned over 30% every 3 years, and our church turned over 25 to 50% every year, which meant we were constantly solving the same problems, constantly in survival mode, no matter what size or how many people we reached. If we didn't reach somebody the next week, we could be gone the next. Like, that's what it kind of felt like. If there was a year that God didn't bring people, didn't bless it, didn't see results, then it was going to struggle. And then you have friends leaving all the time. And so in 2019, um, I remember arguing with God on the way to my doctor's office as he was telling me to talk to him about depression and possibly getting some help. And I wasn't going to do it. And he made me, like, fought me the whole 45-minute drive to the doctor. And in 2019, realized I had been grieving for 8 years without actually grieving. And the toll of that had taken a massive amount. And then COVID hit, and there were physical realities, like the gym was closed, opportunities were closed. I had two middle schoolers who have the metabolism of middle schoolers, and I was 40 and didn't have their metabolism, but I ate like I did. And then I moved into this role, and it was on the road, and you're trying to get home as fast as you can, so you don't stop and eat a salad. You can't eat one while you drive. So what are you going to do? And so then this all to get connected, right? Like physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, they're all a part of our whole being, our health, our wellness. And so there have been those times where it's checked, times I've done well, times I've not, but he's kept bringing me back to it until we hit it 3 years ago. Well, 2 years and 11 months ago, hard, and have not looked back and continue to kind of do a more regular, I say regular, weekly to monthly checkup on those areas of life and with others as well.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that. So one, I want to just applaud you for looking at this holistically. I think that's incredibly important. Um, and then recognizing that sometimes this takes place within the context of community, right? Having people that you can do this with,
Always. Mhm.
which I think is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Tim, I wonder. So you've mentioned, you're a leadership coach. You got certified as a personal trainer. You're working with leaders consistently in your role as a district superintendent. And I know the word discipline can carry some negative connotations for a lot of people.
Yeah.
As someone from the military, I will say it does not hold those negative connotations. So I always have to be reminded that for some people they do, right? And I think sometimes when people think of discipline, they think of punitive. And I want to, like, that's not what we're
Yeah.
not talking about punitive
Yeah.
discipline here. But I
Yeah.
wonder, how would you define
Oh.
discipline in terms of what we're going to be discussing tonight?
Yeah, I think that's hugely important to start with it not being punishment. Even when we're trying to build new habits, often we're punishing ourselves for whatever we've done in the past versus choosing a way forward. So I think
Ah,
discipline is consistently, that's a key word, consistently choosing what moves you forward
oh,
over what feels easiest right now. So, what moves you
wow.
forward over what feels easy? To expand a little bit, discipline would be like intentionally training our thoughts, our choices, and behaviors, right? Thoughts, choices, and behaviors so that we can consistently act according to our values and move toward desired outcomes. And the kicker, even when there's no motivation to do so. So that's
Well,
kind of the expanded and the short.
I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I think we've all got enough at this point to be chewing on this.
Yeah, buddy.
uh,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we have got to unpack this. That's
Yeah.
a great way of looking at this. Consistently choosing so that we're moving forward.
Uh-huh.
I love that. Um, and the areas that you talked about here, the values, the thoughts, or excuse me, the thoughts. What were those areas again? Remind me.
Thoughts, choices, and behaviors,
Yeah,
so that they're really what you're doing is aligning your thoughts, choices, and behaviors with your values.
that's good. That's
So
good.
often we fail to stick with new habits or to remain disciplined because we lack alignment. I can talk more about that,
Mm,
but like there's not an
yes.
alignment between our why, our purpose, our vision, our values, and the choices that we're making. So we may say we value discipline, but our life doesn't look like it. This was huge
Mm,
for me. 3 years ago when I first turned the corner on on my physical health, and we can talk about what all of the things that came into that. But one of the things I did is I looked, and I would have told you as a leader, as a man, I'm a strong and disciplined person in general. And then I looked at my life and I realized I wasn't. I thought I
Mm,
was, but my actions revealed something else was true about me. So I did something simple as simple can be. It's like, I want to be strong and disciplined. So I came up with a list of just 5 things that strong and disciplined people do every day.
mm,
And I made sure that before I went to bed, I checked off 4 of the 5. I didn't have to be perfect. 80, an 80, a B was good enough. Um, and that if I did 4 out of 5 every day, I would become a strong and disciplined person by doing what strong and disciplined people do.
could you share those five with us?
I was thinking about, I was trying to remember what they were. So one of them was brush your teeth.
Okay.
One of them was to work out, some kind of physical movement. It could be a walk, it could be anything. Track what I eat.
Uh,
So simple reality. You know this in your finances. You know this in your health. You know this in your church. If you don't track it, nothing changes.
mm,
Only the things you track can change. So I was going to track my food, pray,
mm,
and then I think the last one was intentional conversation with at least one family member.
mm.
And so some of them, like if I hadn't done them and I'm coming to bed, getting ready for bed, I can look at that list. I'd only done 3. There were always a few that I could go do right then to finish that goal. And so I'm reinforcing this message to myself that I am strong and disciplined by doing what strong and disciplined people until because our brains, I mean, we'll get into this again too, but like our brains are designed not to discern what's true, but to act on the most repeated message. And some of us say horrible things to ourselves every morning, every night, every day, all day long, and we act on them because we hear them most often.
Yeah, man. Oh, this is gold. This is gold.
Yeah.
So okay, let's. I want to get into the positive aspects of this,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I do want to name here, uh, having now worked with a number of different leaders, what have you witnessed to be the consequences of poor discipline in ministry?
Well, we can observe all the way back to scripture. And I think the numbers are probably pretty standard, but 30% of leaders in scripture finished well. And if we don't have discipline, we won't finish well.
Mm,
We won't end up where we intend to end up.
mm, mm. Okay.
So, just taking physical as an example, Robert Murray McShane, 1700s Presbyterian preacher, Presbyterian. By the time he was in his early 20s, in the 1700s, he was pastoring a church of 1,000. Prolific, would have been, you would know his name if he had continued to live. Brilliant. Graduated from, I believe it was Oxford at 14, died at 29. On his deathbed, he said, God gave me a message and he gave me a horse to deliver it on. And lo, I have killed the horse and I cannot deliver the message.
Wow. As you're saying that, Tim, it was a thought that struck me earlier. I think sometimes we substitute being busy and working hard for
Ooh.
discipline.
Yeah. And I
And
love the word you use, capacity,
yeah,
because improving in our life, moving forward in our ministry, our organization, our marriage, our parenting is not about working harder. It's about increasing our capacity.
yeah, because I was thinking about, I suffered from the same moment that you did, this moment of self-reflection, where when I had to look at what I believe to be a disciplined person, I realized that what I had been calling discipline was that I was always there and I was always showing up, but I had not built into my life the life sustaining, healthy, and holistic rhythms that were in alignment with the deepest held values that I had.
Yeah.
And so I was able to stay just busy enough to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, but I was slowly eroding my well-being by not acting upon this holistic discipline. And we're
Yeah.
going to talk about holistic discipline here in a little bit, but I think
Yeah.
it's going to be important for us to explore that.
Yeah.
Um, so when you had mentioned a few things here, but I wanted to, when you think about if I'm a if I'm a pastor, if I'm a local church leader, someone who's deeply invested in ministry and the call to faith, what are some of the I want us to think holistically. What are some of the
Mm.
areas that I really need to focus on in terms of being mindful of my discipline and my habit formation?
Yeah. No, I think that's, I think it's so key that we are learning what we need to say no to so that we can say
Mm,
yes to what's most important, right? And consistently. So it's about what we do every day. We were talking about just a minute ago what happens if we don't, but it's not like, I mean, the dramatic is you're not going to finish well. Well, the other is you're just going to become reactive instead of proactive, or you're going to get drawn into the urgent instead of the important, or you're going to be treading water, which means you're working just as hard as if you were swimming forward. You're just not going anywhere.
mhm,
And so these things happen when we lose this discipline. But I think discipline is about doing fewer things consistently. And I think
mm,
it has to start with what God has given you to do and only you to do. So, what are the things that only you can do? Only you can care for your spirit. Only you can care for your mind. Only you can care for your body. Only you can care for your heart. Only you can care for your spouse. And only you can care for your kids. Anything else, someone else can do or will do one day, right? Like that's where it has to start. It has to be the most important thing to us that we steward the thing that God has entrusted to only you. Nobody else has your mind. Nobody else has your heart, your body, your soul, and nobody else can take care of them for you. And if you don't take care of them, they don't get taken care of. So we have to prioritize that in our time, our energy, right? Like if I put my best energy into being the best man, son of God, father, husband, and person, that will make me better in every interaction. And I'm offering something more to every person I interact with. I may not be interacting with as many people, but I will have deeper, more quality interactions that will ripple much further. And so we have to start there. And then I think we ask what Jesus said often. Jesus said, I only do what the Father tells me to do.
mm,
I like to do what the Father tells me to do, and I feel like I do, but I like to tell him 10 other things that are good ideas that I think I should do. The problem is when I do that, I do the things he gave me with mediocrity and I take someone else's tasks away from them. And so I have to really spend some discernment energy in what has he asked me specifically to do, and be sure that's done before I do anything else or add anything else to that plate. And that's probably not all that many things. And then, like, one of the ways I kind of evaluate some of these areas of life for health is a life wheel. It's a coaching tool
mhm,
where we kind of look at just this: how is your mental well-being, and you kind of rate that on the wheel, and your spiritual well-being, your key relationships, your friendships, your work, your finances, your energy. You kind of rate those, and then I, at the beginning of the year, I write goals in each of those areas for the year. um, and then key steps, at least 1 or 2 steps in each of the areas. And then I prioritize the areas based on what I feel is most pressing or God is leading me in the moment. And then I share that whole document with our district board of administration or DBA, so that they know how I'm working on me in the year and they can ask about it. And so those kind of how I see these things working together. They work a lot like the spokes in a wheel. When they're all tight, you roll true. But when one gets loose, not really a big deal, right? But anytime one gets loose, it will affect another. If you're
Mm.
emotionally drained, it will affect your marriage. And if you, it may even affect your finances because you're more likely to spend more when you're stressed on things you don't need, right? Like, and if that gets out of whack, then it starts to add even more stress and affects your emotional state. And it goes on until several are loose. And when several spokes are loose, the wheel wobbles and you crash. And so paying attention to those spokes and making sure that they're equally tight and working together well, really helps. And then a key, like I can't not say this one. It's a trumpet call message for me on our district. I'm a part of an organization that provides training and rest and gives rest retreats to pastors free every year, multiple a year. And if here's what I believe is true. You can't be exhausted and holy. So Galatians 5:22 and 23. Fruit of the Spirit. If the Spirit is in you doing what the Spirit does, you will show love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. When I am tired, exhausted, I am worse at all of those. I'm less loving, I'm less kind, I'm less patient, I'm less self-controlled, I'm less gentle, and usually with the people I love most. So it's almost impossible for me to run on fumes and walk in holiness, walk in the Spirit. That's
Wow.
why Ortberg says that busyness is not of the devil, it is the devil.
Wow. Okay. Man, I want to unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We talk about spiritual disciplines all the time. Means of grace. Uh, you're talking about Sabbath, salt, rest, and you made this statement earlier, that without clarity about what only we can do, and without building into our lives the rhythms of discipline to
Yeah.
focus on doing those things we can only do, that we live reactively.
Yeah.
And so it reminded me how often I think in ministry, prayer again becomes another act of busyness rather than an orientation to the voice that tells us what we ought to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
That's
that we
good.
can focus on those things and
Mhm.
execute on those things. And when we don't, we spread too thin in ways that we were never intended, which means we
Mhm.
stop prioritizing the things that are going to be the most the elements of our lives that are the most necessary for us to flourish in the way that are
Yeah.
reflective
Mhm.
of the kind of witness that we want to be for Christ in the world around us.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that. I'm curious. You kind of shared a little bit of your practice, and I don't want to
Mhm.
jump in this too quickly, too early, but I do want to
Yeah, you're
explore
fine.
because it's fresh. You said you kind of you do this life wheel, which I've seen these incredibly effective and helpful tool. It's a great self-reflective tool in terms of just evaluating where you are,
Yeah.
and then you build a plan. But you mentioned that our discipline needs to be in alignment with our values.
Yeah.
Can you step us back one level and talk us a little bit about how did you personally do the exploration where you could begin to name your values so that when you're doing that reflective exercise, what you come up with is consistent with, or as you're in your language, in alignment with your
Yeah.
values?
Yeah, there's um let me see if there's a let me see if I've shared some of this. I'm going to throw something up here on the board that I think it'll be
Please.
helpful for us. It's a framework I use for coaching and development. I think it's a way to recognize whether you have the capacity to move forward or not,
Okay.
and what's getting in the way. And we've hit on all of this around it, right? And there were shifts for me, 7 key shifts that led to these 7 key capacities that I think were significant. So the first was focused. So focus. Um, and do I know just that? Do I know what my purpose is? Do I
Mm,
know that if I have one more book to write, one more stage to step on, one more talk to give, there is one message that I will give my life to sharing?
mm,
And is there a sense of identity and purpose that is connected to my values? What is important to me? What breaks my heart? What makes me angry? What do I care most about? And so those values, I think if we get most of us, you can find all kinds of them. Brene Brown puts out a good one. If you just search it, it's a list of common values that people have. Most of us will spend about 15 minutes, narrow it down to 10 or maybe five. The key is to go all the way to two. And then you really get to see how everything folds in on what's really most important to you. And naming those and having them written down, discussing them with those who know you best and say, this is what I think I value, because there's aspirational values and actual values.
mm,
So, when you look at my life, do I value this or not? And so, if not, what is it I value instead? I mean, a common in churches, we say we value excellence and we value participation. What happens when those two come into conflict? Which do we value more, right? So that's an example of how they can come into conflict. But identifying folks, see, for me, I was kind of aimless, even like with my health, my emotional health. I was trying lots of different things, wandering, focused, not really sure what was the next thing or what I was supposed to work in. I've felt this way even lately. I've gone through transition in life with my kids, graduating. I look to the next season of life and been working on how do I narrow down what my purpose. I have some questions I've been working through. But then the next step that often doesn't happen is ownership. Or the next step that needs to happen, next capacity, not even action, but we've got to take ownership. This is taking responsibility. See, I was playing victim to my job and my circumstances as an excuse for my physical unhealth, which led to emotional unhealth and led to a relational unhealth. Um, and I was giving myself an excuse, an off of by because well, I'm just victim to the job I have, the travel I have to do, the places I have to go, the meals I have to have with people. They get to choose where we go. They never chose what was on my plate. That was me. But I was going to blame something else. As long as we're blaming anything else for where we are in life, we're not taking ownership. Now, listen,
mm,
you can't decide everything that happens to you, but you choose every reaction you ever make, every
mm.
choice you ever make in response to those things. And your life is made up of those responses. You will reap what you sow. And when we take ownership of the purpose, of the values, of the identity, then something can happen. But as long as I'm playing victim and making excuses, nothing changes. I can't move forward. And so we have to be able to take ownership. And then we have to build the capacity to keep going when motivation wanes or when we hit a hard time. And this is a capacity for resilience, right? So we need to be able to be resilient. Can we stick to it when things are hard? Can we stay consistent in our state of present? Can we be a non-anxious presence when the world is chaotic? Can I continue to do the right things when life gets stressful? Can I have the cheesecake tonight, but tomorrow start the day on the right track? Or have a bad lunch, but make sure I have a good dinner? Or will that shoot the whole day, which shoots at the weekend and turns into a week and a month, right? Like, can I take care of, yeah, I didn't get much time with God today. Tomorrow, we're going to get right back on track. Because it's not about intensity, it's about consistency and the ability to keep going and have a plan for what happens when you hit the setbacks, the roadblocks, the obstacles that allows you to keep moving forward. Too many of us give up when it gets hard. I love Andy Andrews. One of the things he talks about is perseverance without exception. Most of us think we persevere, but we persevere until we get tired or bored. And success, effectiveness is on the other side of boredom and struggle. Getting great at anything takes doing a lot of boring stuff. And we've got to be able to be resilient to do it. And then the key that they kind of, for me, is a passion is our wellness, is what we're talking about. This whole life wellness. This will limit my capacity to move forward in my leadership, in my marriage, in my life, in our church. If my church is not healthy, it won't move forward. If we are not, as a church, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally, structurally, systematically healthy, we're not going to move forward. So it's not just wellness for wellness sake. It's wellness for the sake of moving forward in the direction God has called us, right? Philippians chapter 3, leaving behind what was behind so I can strain forward to that for which Christ called me. So we want to be able to move forward. Wellness is key to that. So we keep going. And this is where we hit the alignment piece. And what I run into a lot in the gym with clients is, and I see this with pastors too, we have goals and we have desires, but they're not aligned with our purpose and our values. So we set a goal. So he'll come in, I want to lose 20 pounds. Great. What do you care about in life? Well, I'm not sure. Well, what's your purpose? Well, why do you want to lose? I don't know. I just want to be healthier. That's not going to get you anywhere without a specific why. So my why when I started getting physically healthy was kind of, one of them was kind of vain, and the other one was survival. A pastor in my district, my age, had a TIA, a mini stroke, while he was preaching, and couldn't talk for like 5 minutes. Got up, finished his sermon, and then spent the rest of the week in the hospital. My age. And then at the same time, my son turned 16. He's 6'2", 4 inches taller than me, and was getting strong. And the vain part was I was not going to have a boy in my house stronger than me. That was just not going to happen. So those were motivators for me in what I did. How I did it involved something really important, but these aligned. So the actions I wanted to take aligned with my focus. My goals aligned with who I wanted to be. I had a lifetime of ministry and family that I wanted to invest in, that I need to be here for. And I want to be stronger than my son. That's a strong purpose for me. And I had to take ownership and make some decisions for myself and pursue when the motivation was gone so that I could get well enough to lead. The alignment was key, but then it took relationships. No one moves forward alone. You'll go fast and burn out. You'll go far with others. We have to have others. So one of the things I did is I chose the expensive gym because I knew I wouldn't want to waste that much money. So I was going to go. And I chose the one that provided a trainer for every workout, 6 days a week, right? And a community, and one that took at least 60 days to cancel from. That way, I had community and relationships that would keep me moving forward, right? I had accountability. I had these value, again, of not wasting resources, steward of the life he's given me and the resources he's given me, that all connected to me being able to move forward. And then that final one is the discipline to do the things that will move forward, even when they're not easy or when an easy option comes. And so this is how we increase these capacities. We're able to move forward. Actually, we move forward naturally because the capacity increases. When I walked into the gym, I couldn't curl a 25-pound dumbbell. Not because, I couldn't control, I couldn't curl a 25-pound dumbbell. Now I can curl a 50-pound plus dumbbell. But it wasn't that I needed to try harder 2 years ago to lift that heavier dumbbell. I needed to spend the time increasing my capacity, my strength to do those things. So these are about increased capacity. So alignment is how they all come together so that we can move forward.
Mm,
Discipline holds us and helps us be resilient. We're not going to be resilient until we take ownership, and this matters more to us than anything else, right? Our wellness is what enables all of it. And so if there's one or two of these that are low or need work, we can help ourselves move forward by increasing this capacity versus trying harder, right? It's a system that works together to create the life we want. So for me, these were like I moved from aimless to focus, from excuses to ownership, from defeated to resilient. I was just getting defeated and give up, getting defeated, give up. Then I went from sick, really emotionally, physically, mentally sick to well. Went from spontaneous and reactive to aligned. So if I'm not aligned, I'm going to go after whatever seems like it might work right now and work fast. And when I'm not aligned, I won't stick to it and I won't do it consistently. And I put people around me to succeed. Like when I started as a DS, I knew I didn't have the capacity to do it. So I hired a counselor, I hired a coach. I found another DS who had been doing it a long time that I trusted to guide me when I didn't know what to do. And I hired I didn't hire, I connected with a pastor outside my denomination that could be my pastor. I needed a team if I was going to succeed. Same thing with
mm.
any other area. I don't see my blind spots. I need help. And so relationships are where that happens. And then the discipline is that final step of consistently continuing to do it through actions and choices and behaviors. So, sorry, that was a lot, really fast. Something I've been working on lately and really excited about. So, alignment.
Yeah. No. Okay. So one of the things I'm really glad this was recorded because I think that there's plenty there that we can work through. As I was looking at this, Tim, you were mentioning sort of the how this is pertained specifically to you physically at times. But I was
Yeah,
even thinking, I was looking at this going, man, I could look at this list and do this financially, right? Like,
financially, marriage, your
yeah,
church, your
yes,
business, your
every area
parenting,
of life.
all of it.
And what stands out to me, Tim, is that list doesn't feel punitive, shame based, or obligatory,
Oh, no.
right? Like it's none of those things. It is, it's an opportunity to assess, to align, and to build a
Yeah,
future that is consistent with my purpose, my focus,
yeah,
right? That is flourishing, it's thriving. It's an empowered way of understanding the work of discipline and habit formation.
yeah.
And one of the mantras that stands out for me, former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink consistently says, "Discipline is freedom."
Oh,
And as I
100%. Love
and
that.
as I look at that list, and you think about, as I take ownership, as I build resilience, as I focus on my wellness, as I seek alignment, as I
Mhm.
establish this team of people, there's freedom in that. It creates
Oh,
the room to move in the ways that are going to be the most life giving for me. And
yeah,
so I think that for me is such a huge takeaway from this is that a list like that is really about giving back agency and giving about the
yeah,
potency of the joy of doing the work that aligns my life with the
yeah.
focus that I have.
And the ownership piece, and Jocko Willink is somebody who talks a lot about extreme ownership, but the ownership piece at first for me, it did feel shameful. Like, oh, my life is here because I let it get here. But there's power in realizing God put in us the ability to choose. And he put in us the ability to sow into our lives things that will reap a harvest. And so if I don't like my life, I have the power to change it. He has given it, and he will help me when I'm aligning with him, leaving behind, right, that which was before and straining toward, which I love, was not achieving, was not acquiring, was not doing. It's just straining, just moving toward what's ahead so that I can obtain what Christ has already taken hold of me for, what Christ has already done in me. He has laid out the good works for us to do ahead of time. Ephesians 2:10, right? So for us, it's learning to expand our capacity because really all the gifts and strengths he put in us, he puts in us in seed form. They're not fully developed. We have to do the work and the time of developing and allowing that capacity to grow. So it's not about like working harder, trying harder. In some ways, it's about doing less with more intention. So
Yeah.
this is really like one of the ways I talk about this is how you move from stuck to intentional in life. And when you get intentional in life, things begin to change. I mean, even here, like you think about relationships. I'm on this call with you sharing this because Jeff and I have a relationship that goes back decades. Every opportunity you ever get in life comes from a relationship. I'm a DS, honestly, because I saw our former GS sitting in a hotel lobby eating breakfast by himself. And I went over and sat down and talked with him as an anonymous 30-year-old pastor of a church nobody'd ever heard of. And we had a conversation that began a friendship that began him watching the things we were doing, which led to opportunity and other opportunities and conversations. So every opportunity you ever get comes from your relationships. And so those things are all like, they're so intertwined. We could spend all night on any one of them. And actually, that's what I do with coaching or in any form, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whether it's church, organization, individual, health or not health, life, leadership, is we spend the first 7 sessions, 8 sessions, one on the capacity principle and one first 7 on this before we ever talk about what you eat or work out. Because those won't matter if we don't get this stuff because that's what usually holds us back, right? We go all in on something new because we don't have focus. We're not sure what works. We're grabbing at it. We go all in, then we get hurt or we get burnout or we get tired or we don't see results fast enough. So we quit. Change one little thing you do every day and you'll change your life.
Mm.
Change something you do for a little while and nothing changes. It's just the little things over and over again. Consistency always beats intensity. Always.
Mm. You mentioned there that you had to turn loose of this idea of being a victim.
Yeah.
And I think that is perhaps for us one of the biggest challenges because I found myself in a very similar place around the same time, 2017, 2019. Uh, the congregational demands, the needs of people, the the mechanisms of ministry, they were doing the things to me. So when I crashed, and I crashed about 2019, um, I would tell you that I was struggling with depression, but I couldn't bring myself to use the word burnout. And
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
reason why is because I felt like depression was something that was happening to me.
Mhm.
Burnout was something that I went, oh, I failed
Right.
to take seriously the kinds of disciplines,
Mhm.
to build the kind of patterns and habits and rhythms into my life that were going to be necessary.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that's key in this is so I guess the question I have with that
Yeah.
is well, as you think about helping people build habits, build discipline, what are some of the saboteurs that start to erode what this looks like
Mhm.
for us?
I love that. Like that's such a key question, right? Because all of us have tried something new. We've all done it for a while. And like I've had clients who've worked with me for 6 months who had a bad weekend that turned into a month and they quit altogether. And years later, they're worse off than they were when they started. Um, and we've all been there, right? We've all made New Year's resolutions that we didn't keep. And so what are the things that get in the way? I think the first is this lack of focus. Is we've not really done the time, done the work to discover a driving sense of purpose. We might think we do. We might think that like oh, my purpose is to serve God in his church, or to spread gospel holiness. Like we may have some language, or to love my family well is one of our purposes, but like we've not really defined it. What do we love and he has called us to, and what does he put in us that's unique that can drive us when we want to give up? What is it that burns within us, like Jeremiah, the word, like what's burning in our souls that we just have to like give life to? What are we praying with, that we just, it has to happen, that nothing's going to stop it? And we haven't done the work to really define a purpose. And to use Simon Sinek's language, you can use why. I like purpose better. I mean, sometimes why is useful in certain conversations, but we just lack focus. And then we are, what you talked about just a second ago, we fail to take ownership, right? I mean, these go right back here. We fail to take ownership. Um, we are willing to accept our own excuses. You can, what's it is? You can make progress, or you can make excuses. You can move forward, or you can make excuses. You have to reject your own excuses. And we will let ourselves off the hook so easily, so quickly. And here's what I think's going on. And this like was massive for me, was when I realized I didn't trust me. I had told myself hundreds, maybe thousands of times I was going to do something and then didn't do it. And so I had taught myself that I couldn't be trusted. And I had to do some small things like this list of 5 to rebuild my trust in myself. It's kind of like Peter on the water, right? He didn't lose trust in Jesus. He lost trust in his ability to do what Jesus said he could do. And that's why he sank. Jesus was walking on water fine. He didn't have any doubts of that. He just didn't know he could. Well, God has put something in you that enables you to walk on water, and we just don't believe it because we have tried so many things and failed. We've tried so many things and gave up. We said we were going to do something, and then within 10 minutes, we're doing the exact opposite. And we've done that enough times that we just really don't trust ourselves. And so part of what has to happen is we have to learn to rebuild the trust with small wins. Just small little wins, not going hard from the beginning. Like if we have a new client sign up at the gym for 6 days a week, I tell them, don't come 6 days a week yet. You're going to burn out or get hurt. Trust us. Start with 2 or 3, and then we'll work you up and help you figure out when. And when you feel good, or you're so sore all the time, you need to work out more. That's what happens. We'll help you take your next step. But too many people go all in. We do it with a new discipleship program, or a new idea, or a new program or system. We just like, I'm going to change everything about my life tomorrow. And we have like a half a day of it. And then we give up, and really, we just don't trust ourselves to finish. And so rebuilding that trust by taking ownership. We have no plan to rebound after failure. So there's not an intentional. So like one of the things I teach that applies in all kinds of areas of life is the rule of 2. So in health, you don't have two anything meals. I don't like cheat language because I'm not cheating on something. I'm choosing a different purpose for the meal, but I don't have 2 anything meals in a row. I don't skip 2 workouts in a row. I don't miss 2 days of time with God in a row. I don't ruin 2 conversations with my wife in a row. I don't miss 2 opportunities with my kids in a row. I don't miss out on opportunities in business or in leadership in a row. I'm working intentionally to have a way to rebound. So I know 1 is fine. That happens. But I'm going to make sure it's not 2 in a row. It could be 2 out of 3, but it's not going to be 2 in a row ever. And that's key for me in a plan for rebounding when it gets hard. What are you going to do when life gets so stressful and overwhelming? How are you going to retreat and reset? How are you going to rest? What are the rhythms already in place that are going to protect you? So having a plan that enables you to be resilient, plan for when things go wrong. Not being well enough is a big saboteur. So not realizing that we're not emotionally well, but we're trying to get physically well. And there's maybe something in our heart and mind that's sabotaging our efforts. So if I'm trying to, so as holy as people, Nazarenes, Wesleyans, we don't drink. So we got to find something else to distract or deny or numb our pain. And for a lot of us, it's food. For a lot of us, it's some others video games. Some of us, it's Amazon or eBay or whatever. And we have these other ways that we're dealing with something, but not dealing with it. We're avoiding something. And until we deal with it, we're not going to be able to make progress in other areas. And so it sabotages our discipline. The lack of alignment, we already talked about. Trying to go alone is a big one. If nobody knows your goal, it's not a goal. It's just an idea. Like if
Mm,
nobody's in it with you, you're not going to do it, right? Like this is why we're told to confess to one another. It's me and Jesus. Is it really confession? I
mm,
mean, I haven't brought anybody else into it. Nobody's going to know.
mm.
So, and then again, the rule of two, we talk about that. So I think those are key things that sabotage. It's really just the opposite of these, but of the moving forward is lack the capacity somewhere, and we're unaware that we lack the capacity. And
Yeah.
so that's where bringing other people in to help us think through a plan even before we jump in. Now, sometimes we get guilty of like, I'm going to pray until I get a go. Like, no, pray until you get it or go until you get a no.
Yeah.
Don't pray until you get a go.
Yeah.
Um, and so we assume yes and we act, but have an intentional action, not a haphazard, aimless, sporadic, spontaneous. Tomorrow I'm going to start Atkins diet. Well, why? For what purpose and what end and for how long and what's the goal and why Atkins? Why not something else? What's the goal here? What are we doing? What are we after? I'm gonna join the gym tomorrow. Well, which gym and why? And
Hmm.
how are you gonna when are you gonna go? And does that gym actually work within your regular schedule, your travel path? Will you end up there? I'm gonna jump into church now. Okay, great. What does that mean? And so it's just being real intentional. And the lack of intentionality in these areas is probably the thing that sabotages most. But one that surprises me most is alignment. Is how often that gets us because we're not
Yeah.
aligned with our values, our identity, our vision, our goals, and so we have competing goals in life. We think we have a vision for one thing, but we really don't.
Yeah.
It's not clear. It's not, and so we end up creating goals in different areas that compete. It's like trying to start small groups while you're still doing Sunday school. You create a competing environment, and neither works as well as it could. Um, it's kind of an example from the church world of
Yeah.
this lack of alignment in our vision. The vision's not clear of how we make disciples, so we try five different things, hoping one of them will produce, or that each one will produce a couple, instead of having a clear sense of this is what a disciple is. This is how we form a disciple. We're going to take responsibility for that. Man, how freeing would it be to believe? If I take ownership. I do the right things. All I need is time. He said, I'll reap what I sow. So if I want things different in my church, I do start doing different things. It will lead to a different result.
Hmm.
We have the power to do the things he's asked us to do and showing us to do. We just have things that sabotage the way. But I think alignment is the one that surprises me when it gets a hold
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Man, one of the things I've appreciated here, Tim, is you said earlier it's kind of like a spoke on a wheel where when one thing slips, other thing slips, and I don't think we always realize the cascading effect of when we lose a sense of discipline. So, especially when we're exhausted, and many of us have moved through seasons of being exhausted, it may start with slipping with what I eat, but it also then moves to I don't pay my bills on time, or I'm not spending consistent time with the Lord, or I haven't checked in with that friend or that relative in quite some time that I know I should be checking into because I know that they are a life giver and not a life taker. And it just slips into
Yeah.
one of the things that I had to do, and this goes right along with what you said about celebrating the small wins,
Yeah.
is I found myself at such a vulnerable place, and I knew the kind of person I wanted to be. So I created a mantra for myself where I'm going to do one thing that sucks every day.
Oh, it's good.
I set it in front of me. I'm going to do one thing that sucks every day. And so I actually kept a list on my phone, and just to get myself moving forward in the direction that I needed to move. I kept it in my notes section, and I said, okay, it was 8 o'clock at night. I hadn't done the one thing that sucked today. So I paid my bill early, or I went and ran the dishwasher, or the things that I got so accustomed to putting off, or I'll get to, or they pile up on you. And when you can start to generate that movement,
Oh,
and you
oh,
start to see some of those things that you've been putting off slide away,
yeah,
you start to kind of root for yourself and go,
yeah.
oh, I'm not
I can
piled
do
up
this.
anymore. Right? I can
Yeah,
do this. And those small wins, and I called
yeah,
it my bit by bit mentality. I'm just
yeah,
going to do it bit by bit. And you generate those small wins. It's like creating a flywheel.
yeah.
And here's where I want to move us in our conversation. And then I want to create about 10, 15 minutes for a time of questions here
Okay.
too. But when you get to this flywheel, you create these habits, you start to execute on these things that are in alignment with your focus, in your purpose. When you start doing these things bit by bit, it becomes a flywheel. And now you start to do them not simply because they're the things to do, but because of who you understand yourself to be. So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about when
Oh,
disciplined habit moves to
yeah.
identity.
Yeah. So, love that. I think it's huge. I think one of the things, the way I like to put it when it comes to that spoke in the opposite direction, right? So, like we talked about spoke getting loose, and that feels very negative, and it is. But the thing is, discipline is contagious. If you get disciplined in one area of life, you will get disciplined in another. You can't eat well and then be mean. It doesn't work. Like it's just really strange. You don't get in the habit of sleeping the right amount and falling to temptation as often, right? Like discipline is connected. And so you get discipline in one area, it bleeds into other areas because you are, like you said, becoming someone different. And this is, I think, the key, right? So the temptation tomorrow is to begin to think about um, different ways to act, different behaviors. I'm going to start doing these five things, right? And we think, well, if I act differently, then my life will be different. So I'm gonna just build this new habit, and I'm gonna be super disciplined about it. But like we talked about before, we're not very good at changing our behavior. Like New Year's resolutions, easy example. Paul, I don't do what I want to do. I do what I don't want to do. Like all like we know we can resonate, we can unpack that theologically, but the reality is we can resonate with that sentiment. I struggle to change my behaviors. And I think that spiritually even, so let's take this into that world, we tend to think that being a Christian is about the things we do or don't do. And that if I'm struggling to do what God wants me to do, I just need to have more faith and try harder. But I would say that Jesus is far less concerned with your actions than he is your identity. He is wanting to return your identity to who God made you to be. But from the time we were young, we have heard lies about who we are. You'll never be enough. You won't be good enough. You can't do that. You can't trust yourself. You never finish anything. And here's the thing, they don't go away. They're there. And then every time something happens, especially if we make a mistake, the first thing I think the enemy wants to do is whisper one of those lies.
Mm.
And and he whispers that lie. And what happens is our identity informs our thinking, right? Our identity informs the way we think. We will believe the thing that we have heard most often about who we are. And then we will think it. And the really hard thing is we have to take our thoughts captive because our thoughts then lead to our feelings. And you realize when you understand the shape and dynamic of the brain that most of our actions flow out of what we feel, not what we think. But we can actually control what we think with our feelings. Cognitive behavioral theory catches up with scripture when it recognizes you have the ability to think yourself into different feelings, not emotion. Emotions last 10 to 30 seconds. Feeling is what lingers and you choose to hold on to and feel. And so we have the power of this. Think about Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 and following. Think about these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Right? Like we have the ability to think differently that leads to different feelings, which will lead to different ways of speaking, which leads to our actions. So here we have this cycle here of identity that comes all the way to action. And its identity leads to a way of thinking, and that thinking informs the way we feel, which leads to the way we speak. And if I believe a lie up here, for example, if I believe that I have to prove myself as a man, and part of that is by demanding respect. And my wife, who is trying to show love and remind me of something I forgot, says, "Hey, you forgot to take out the trash. Can you do that really quick?" Or, "Hey, do you see that traffic up there? Hit your brakes." My first reaction, because I'm in a vulnerable place of needing to prove myself, is to think she's attacking and questioning my manhood, which then makes me feel threatened and causes me to lash out in words and actions to protect myself. And now I've
Mhm.
hurt the rest of the evening. But if I can feel secure in my identity as a son and in my relationship with her, I hear her words as we're meant to be. And my thought is, she's trying to show me love. And I'm going to hear that and receive that as love. And so I feel loved and I want then to show her love in return, all because the identity shifted. But the problem is, so then these actions repeated, habits are just actions repeated until they happen without us having to intentionally repeat them, right? Here's the fun part. Our habits, the collection of our habits, defines our character, which informs our identity. Now, there's this there's this thing that happens, and it's the flywheel, it's the trigger, and whatever it is, whatever language you want to use. Something happens, and we fall into an old identity pattern, and we feel something, think something, and we drop in and we go all the way to here before we ever realize it. In
Mhm.
some ways, those with addiction will describe it as disassociating and going all the way through this process without ever having thought anything. And it's because there's a neural pathway from here to here. It goes as soon as something happens, we believe this about ourselves. So then we think it, we feel it, we speak it, we do it. And in it, that's our habit, right? That neural pathway, every time we repeat it, gets deeper and deeper. And we have, so thinking spiritually, sinful, unholy neural pathways that have come from lies about who we are, lies about what we can do, lies that don't align with who God says we are. And so we're trying to change this without changing this, and it's impossible because we
Mhm.
will always go back to who we believe we are. And most of us, think about the words you speak that lead to your actions. He said, "Let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, only what is useful for building each other up." Okay.
Mhm.
So who do you speak to most? Yourself. Do you only speak what is useful for building you up ever? Or are you speaking things that tear you down and lead into the actions that you'd rather not? So you say something to yourself about who you are and how this day went, which led to needing to do something to feel better or distract that you wish you hadn't because now you have this habit that you just can't shake. It all comes back to believing a lie about who we are. But
Mhm.
when we come back to and keep reminding ourselves that God said we're His, that we are chosen, precious, beloved, that He has made us in His image, that He has put things in us, shrinks from the time we were born. He has a purpose for us, good works prepared ahead of time for us to do. And then when we came to Him, He said, "Let me throw in some more stuff and give you spiritual gifts as well."
Mm.
Now you have everything you need to become who I made you to be and do what I made you to do. Just remember who I said you are, not what anyone else says. And so when our
Mm.
identity is rooted in Him, new neural pathways start to form. You
Mm.
cannot erase an old neural pathway. You can't. It's always going to be there. An old neural pathway will always be there. What you can do is create newer, deeper ones that you fall into. And that, in my mind, is moving forward and discipleship. This is the process of being made holy. It takes our
Mm.
entire life because we have joined a new family, been given a new identity, and now we need to learn new ways of thinking, feeling, speaking, and acting that will form holy habits, holy character that then informs and reminds us of who we really are as saints.
Mm.
This works together. But we're going to keep falling. And the goal is not to never fall into the old pathway. The goal is to recognize earlier and earlier when it's happening and change paths early because you can't help it. It is impossible to always follow the holy path. It's just not going to happen. But you can recognize when you're on the wrong one. You can catch yourself here and then you change how you feel. Like there was a time I was falling into a depressive mood and I was like, man, what's going on? And I tracked back to where it started and then the thought pattern corrected the thought pattern and the feeling changed. Then my
Mm.
words and actions changed. And it was this remarkable moment. I was like, what just happened? But what just happened was I recognized the path I was on. There's other ways of talking about this. Great book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. She talks about a learner and a judger pathway. Mary Beth, or I can't remember the last name. I can get it to you so you can share it, Jeff. But this for me is huge, huge. I think this describes the soil with the thorns. And these lies are the thorns that we have to constantly pull out over and over again. And if you've ever grown a garden, you know the weeds keep growing, thorns keep showing up, whether you put them there or not. So you got to keep pulling them all your life. And this journey of building new neural pathways that lead to new habits and character that informs, like the small wins, as you build a new habit, it changes your character, which then allows you to believe something new about yourself. And it
Yeah.
cycle continues. So this is where I think that the identity piece takes root. Like why it's so important to connect this and focus here before we focus here. To
Mm.
spend some time, who am I? And really coming to terms with the one thing that you are that can never be taken away from you as child of God.
Mhm.
And if your identity is rooted, built on any other piece, on your leadership, on your pastoring, on your preaching, if you can't come to a place where you would say, if I never preach another sermon, God would love me just the same, we're struggling. If I never do anything right again, Jesus will love me just the same.
Mhm.
Right? And if we can come to that place, then we're ready to begin to take and form the habits that are going to change our lives in other areas. But this, like that's so key. Answering this question, who am I? And then that connects to why am I here? The purpose piece and what do I value? Those are all angles of looking at who I am. So
Mm.
yeah, I can keep going. I'll
Man,
stop there.
no,
And
no, brother, that's excellent. I was thinking even here is that some of us here on this call are pastors, and I think there's even a sort of a neural pathway in how we understand our identity as pastor, which causes us
oof,
to think certain ways. Like you could track
yeah,
back through that, and our self perception as pastors reinforces certain behaviors,
oh,
actions,
yeah.
attitudes, and even creates in us a kind of unhealthy character, right? Because
Mhm.
of the ways in which we've come to understand our identity as pastors. And
And the lies of other people's expectations over God's, um,
absolutely,
or that we're needed when really Jesus is needed, and
yes,
all those kind of lies will sneak in. That's so good, man. So good.
yeah. So I wanted to we've got about 10 minutes left here.
Yeah.
And we've covered a lot of terrain here. And each one of us probably finds ourselves on a different part of this journey in terms of discipline and habit formation. So I wanted to create an opportunity for those of you who are on this call. If you've got a question that you want to ask, I want something that that was said that's kind of stuck with you that you just wanted to like tease out a little bit more? I wanted to create an opportunity here for you to do so. Does anybody have a question they want to ask?
Excuse me. With all of this, I was, you um, I guess it was one of those kind of a selfish things of what was the organization that uh, Tim mentioned about the retreat.
Ah, yes.
I
So
went through the
Selah,
pastors.
Selah leaders, Selah leaders. So we host in North Carolina, and we're working on some others. One in Michigan. We partner and even train leaders on how to host their own. But in North Carolina, in October and March, we host. Right now, these are for men because of the location that's given to us. But we're working on some women's retreats. We just added a couples retreat for ministry couples this year. But for the men, there's a fly fishing retreat. It's from Monday to Thursday morning in Nebo, North Carolina. Your only cost is travel there. And if you shoot me an email, um, then I can send you the link. But if you look up Selah Leaders, you can find it there. It's we get sponsors like WIF and some other organizations to cover the cost so that your only cost is travel and like guided fly fishing trip one day, rest, come prepared. We do, and this is what I love. Like I hate going to a retreat that's overbooked with content. I mean, I can do content all day long. I don't want to sit and receive content all day long. So we do a 90-minute conversation each night, and that's it. Like that's the only content, and then watch what God does. We've seen God bring pastors back from suicide. We've seen marriages restored, ministries restored, teaching pastors how to finish the race well and to live in rest and rhythms that God has for them. And it's been powerful. I've been a part of it for 5 years now. We just partnered up this year with Joyce Meyer's ministry and her ranch, Hope Mountain Ranch in Utah, and hosted a couples retreat for the first time, teaching the same things to pastoral couples. Really excited about that. We're working on one in Alabama in the next year or so. So we also will bring leaders in. Like if you had a couple leaders from your district, you could send them, go through the retreat, and then we'll give you everything you need to run the content, run the play on your own in your district. Find your hook. Maybe it's fishing, maybe it's golf, whatever. The fly fishing thing is just our hook. It can be anything. We're running it for women on our district this year, but we'll give you the videos, the materials, the questions to ask, the conversation to have. And you get to see, and it's been powerful. I've had DSs from the Wesleyan Church that brought, and they're like, "I've never heard this." And I'm like, "Well, if you've never heard it, you're not teaching it to anybody, and that's a problem. So let's fix that." So yeah, Selah Leaders is the organization, and if you can't find it, get with Jeff, get my email, send me a message, or find me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll get you a link to where to sign up.
Okay. Two things then. You can't go wrong with the Blue Ridge Mountains.
That's right.
And my wife's sitting right here and she's like, you got to do a woman's fishing one.
Uh-huh. We're working on it. We've got some key people. Part of it right now is like we can't the dynamic of the bunk rooms mean co-ed doesn't work.
I hear
So
you.
we're working on some different things. We are using the same house for the women on our district, the women leaders to have a similar retreat. So if that goes well, we'll work to replicate it. This will be the first time we've done it there at the scale we're doing it. So it's on the radar. So our buddy who started it was Southern Baptist, left the Southern Baptist Church because he started ordaining women. He's like, I'm not benching half the team. That's crazy. And so
Yeah.
they're working on how to facilitate that for women pastors and leaders and spouses as well.
Cool. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
good. Other questions?
Comments,
Yeah.
improvements. I'm always looking for that. Yes, sir.
I got a question. You mentioned that neural pathways cannot, the old ones
Undone. You
cannot
can't
be
undo them.
undone.
You can't, yeah,
Is that so? I know that you can create new neural pathways,
correct.
but does that mean the old ones get starved out, or
They start to fill in a little bit, but they don't go away completely. And so you get basically create deeper new pathways. And the more often the pathway is tread recently, the more likely you are to follow it again. So if you haven't been on, and it's kind of like if you haven't been on an old trail in the mountains, it starts to get overgrown. It's kind of like that. So your mind follows the most recently entrenched pathway. Now, my opinion, and I think we see it played out, and even with Atomic Habits, they start to say this. Like for a long time, people thought 90 days is a habit, and I think that's crazy. I've not seen it take less than 6 months. It typically takes me 12 to 18 months to build a new habit.
Mm.
It just does. I'm going to fail and falter, and I'm not going to get it in the routine quick enough. The more complex, the longer. Simple ones like laying out. It's like some days I'm training, some days I'm going to work out without training, and um. But the first thing I do when I wake up is I put on my workout clothes and my shoes, because I'm 100 times more likely to go than if I go down and have my coffee and what I slept in. Because if I do that, I'm gonna get stuck right there in that chair and enjoy that coffee and enjoy that moment. And I might even fall back asleep. But if I have my shoes on and I'm dressed, I'm gonna go. And it's the same like when I'm working, I wear shoes in the house. It doesn't matter because I mean I prefer not to, but I'm in my mind is in work mode when I'm in my shoes. So one of the simple habits, which didn't take long to create, was put my shoes on when I leave the bedroom. And that allows me to then kind of hack my bad habits of distraction and not getting started because I feel ready to start.
Mm.
So there's some things like that that are easier. And then there are some that struggle. So I was diagnosed in my 40s with ADHD. We're really bad at building habits, really bad naturally. Like we hate to brush our teeth, like most people with ADHD. Like those kinds of things, like just make us crazy to have to do the same thing every single day. And so we'll do it, and then suddenly we hate it. We'll do it for a while, like obsessively, and then we hate it forever. And it's that kind of thing. We have a hard time building habits. It just takes us longer. So knowing even your mental health, not that that's a dishealth or a disease, or I don't even see it as a deficit or a disorder. I see it as being differently ordered. And I just know like I can get done 10 times as much as most people can in 4 hours, but then I'm going to crash. So I need to know that and prepare for it. And it's going to take me longer to build a habit of continuing to do something. So just some of those are part of it. So, but yeah, it kind of like gets overgrown and you follow the most recently used repeated path that's been worn once it's worn
help me?
or created.
Yeah, thank you. You've studied this more than I have, and I appreciate it, the sharing of the knowledge. I'm still a student,
Yeah.
very much. But
So me too.
yeah, give me your just a few tidbits of your processing of like the Romans 12, mind renewed, the work of the Spirit, and
Yeah.
Christ in the end making all things new, and neural pathways. What's
Sure. So this is my perception. We come to Christ, and in some ways, everything changes that moment. And let's be real, in some ways, nothing changes. I still have all my old habits. I still have all my old hangups. All the neural pathways are still there. All that stuff is there. And he knows that because he made us human. He designed our brains. I wouldn't have designed it that way, but it also makes me more dependent on him for remembering who I am, for changing and renewing my thinking and taking my thoughts. What he tells us, take every thought captive, right? And then when we take every thought captive, we're able to guide our feelings, and then we're able to speak only what is true and useful, right? And that leads to increased favors. But because those old pathways are there, because those old lies come back, because they can sneak back up and take over before I even realize it, I have to constantly come back to him and let him remind me of who I am. I need to constantly align my life with what he says is true over what I feel is true in the moment. And so I think it creates a dependency on him, and it's what he is doing is enabling this process that he created, and recognizing that this discipleship, this following is an ongoing thing. Like, I don't think anybody can ever say, I was discipled as if it was finished, right? Like, you may have had an initial program of knowledge, but your journey of becoming the follower that you were created to be is going to take your whole life. And, some Christians through the years have believed a season after your life to finish the process, right? Like, so it's not an easy thing. And I think it keeps us dependent on him. It keeps us close to him, keeps us relying on him. So let's just, an example would be, it's not uncommon for an analogy of light and truth, right? The truth is the light. Well, if I am in the dark woods, I don't need to know where the pathway is. I just need to be close to the person who has the light. That's the way I find my way out of the darkness, is being close to the light. So the closer I stay to the Spirit, to the light, to the truth, the more the truth is in me, the more the Spirit's work is coming out, and that fruit of the Spirit is growing in me. I think fruit is an intentional image. It grows. And so I think we're meant to have that growth, that process, fruit developing. So one of my practices, spiritual practices from time to time, usually when the Spirit prompts, is to go through and pray through the fruit of the Spirit and say, okay, where is this that I need to put some intentional effort in allowing you to produce this in me? So I don't think we grow. We don't make ourselves grow. We create the capacity, we create the environment that growth can happen. So by staying close to the Spirit, this happens. But when I let the lies rule, which is the opposite of truth, if Jesus is the truth, that means I'm trusting in something other than Jesus to tell me who I am, then I'm going to be broken here. So I think does that kind of connect for you? Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I know I kind of talked like all like this, but I hoped I hit it from enough angles that it made sense. Yeah.
Tim,
Good. Great question.
I think it really hits on when somebody comes to faith, what is transformed and what's influenced.
Mm,
And our heart is
it's good.
transformed, but my mind, will, and emotions,
Yeah.
now the Spirit's got to work on those.
Yeah.
And I think this diagram is just an amazing diagram because 90% of the time when we want to see change, we go to action.
Yeah.
Or we even skip to habit. We think,
Yeah.
there's a reason why 90 days to create a habit is a thing because that's what we want. And so
Yes. That's
in
good.
9 days, I'll buy that book, right?
Yeah.
But
Right. So if
I
I can
think
figure out how to make it work, we'll get rich and fund the church.
really,
Yeah.
and change nobody.
Right.
At the end of
Exactly.
the day, it
That's
won't
so
work.
good.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's so encouraging. And I think what you hit on is what he really, and this is why I start here, that this is what we focus on, but this is what Jesus cares about. And what he always cared about was restoring us to our relationship with the Father, restoring our identity as sons and daughters of the King, right? Like, if we can get that, like, somebody told me early on, I don't know where it was, and it just stuck. It's like, in your preaching, if you help people believe who God says they are, if you help people believe who they are, you'll never have to tell them what to do.
Mm,
Because once you figure out who you are, that determines everything you do. And
mm,
this is kind of Clear talks about it this way. It's like, I'm not trying to stop smoking. Someone who used to smoke, I don't
mm,
anymore. When it's an identity shift, but you can't sustain that on your own. We don't have the willpower, right, to sustain that kind of identity shift. That's where the Spirit comes in, renews us, gives us a new identity, a new creation, and empowers us then to live out. But that old is going to creep back, like, it's going to fight to get back there. The lies are going to come back. It's going to be there. Like, I think that's even what we see in Isaiah, like, where he's saying, you're mine. I chose you. You're precious. You're beloved. I trade the nations for you. All those things are etched into the heart of us, but they get covered up by all the junk and lies and things that have been done to us and things we have done that influence how we think. And we're living out of a past instead of into a future. Yeah. So great observations. I love it.
Yeah. Well, this has been, Tim, this has been fantastic.
Oh, so fun.
It has provided for us an immense amount of material to chew on. Again, I'm so glad that we record these because there's going to be pieces of this that I come back. The 7, the focus, ownership, resilience, wellness, alignment, relationships, discipline. And then this wheel really kind of helps give us some hooks and handles on how to move forward through this. Even the way in which you defined discipline, I think becomes a really powerful way to find the freedom of implementing the things in my life that help me to move forward in alignment with my values, my purpose, my identity. All of that stuff is just been gold for us today. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. I've loved it so much.
Well, friends, thank you all so much for your participation. For those of you who are watching this, I would encourage you to follow Tim on social media. He's always putting out great stuff there. This has been such a gift. His book, again, is Rethinking Church. I would encourage you.
Watch for one coming out. I'm working on it, on that forward framework right now. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you, if your church is in the process, especially if it's in the process of revitalization, to grab hold of that book. It's a great resource, great tool from someone who has done it. And so I would encourage you to pick that up as well. Everyone, thank you. What a blessing, what a gift it has been. And Brian, would you mind praying us as we close?
Absolutely. Father, we thank you for Tim and for his work. We pray a blessing upon him. We ask that you would continue to guide and direct and reveal. And Lord, don't let us lose the seed that's been scattered on our path tonight. But I pray that you would help us as we pursue and we attempt to become who you have called us to be, no more, no less. To take hold of that, the Apostle Paul said, for which you have taken hold of us. Thank you for this night, and I pray for a blessing on my brothers and sisters in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys. So much fun.
All right.